Suddenly, the thundering clamor that had reverberated throughout the Indian Wells Open grounds for the whole week disappeared. It was replaced by a nearly eerie quiet .0:088 seconds within Stadium 1. The arena briefly seemed to be stuck in time, as though the combined breath of over 16,000 at 0:1515 seconds, spectators were detained simultaneously. Linda Noskova's victory was already being reported by sports websites and broadcasters throughout the tennis world. However, within the stadium, the scene had a far greater emotional impact at 0:2626 seconds. For Alexandra Eala, the captivating young talent who had sparked the competition with her 0:3434 seconds was a tremendous sprint, but the dream had just ended in agony. There was intense stress throughout the last rally. The Noskova in the most painful way imaginable. The match was sealed at 0:4141 seconds as the final shot clipped the top of the net and softly dropped into Ella's side of the court. The air of the desert fans began to become more emotional as they learned what had happened around 0:4949 seconds. Social media exploded worldwide in a matter of seconds. However, the discussion wasn't simply put. The scoreline is 0:5858 seconds. Millions of people were enthralled with the image of the net. Alexandra Eala was motionless, her shoulders quivering a little. 1:061 minute, 6 seconds, taking in the fact that her country's long-awaited historic achievement will have to wait a bit longer. However, the moment's underlying reality was potent. Eala hadn't just a match was lost at 1:161 minute, 16 seconds. From the first serve to the last point, she had engaged in an unrelenting battle, not giving up a single inch of the court. 1:231 minute, 23 seconds later, witnesses near the court reported that even Noskova looked clearly taken aback, not just by the triumph but also by the strong opposition Eala throughout the competition. A time of 1:301 minute, 30 seconds was maintained. Television cameras saw a brief conversation between the two players when they eventually reunited at the net to shake hands. 1:381 minutes, 38 seconds were shared online. Noskova reportedly leaned in and whispered to her, "You made me feel like I was playing a machine." However, for the thousands of Filipino supporters, known as the Pinoy Army, were there for 1:471 minutes and 47 seconds. 1:511 minute, 51 seconds. Eala was never merely a machine. She stood for something far more profound. She was a young woman who represented pride to them. With each stroke of her racket, the 1:591 minute, 59-second athlete carries the hopes of a whole country. 2:032 minutes, 3 seconds after each match rally, millions of people in the Philippines stayed up late. 2:082 minutes. 8 seconds. Her amazing trip through Indian Wells had already turned into a national tennis historic occasion. Fans who had rarely witnessed one of their own shine so brilliantly on such a large platform were inspired by 2:142 minutes, 14 seconds. The most poignant part was probably when she walked off court time, 2:212 minutes, 21 seconds. Eala paused briefly and peered up into the tunnel as she gathered her racket bag and walked carefully toward it stands at 2:292 minutes and 29 seconds. Fans cheered and applauded as a sea of Philippine flags waved back at her. 2:342 minutes, 34 seconds, and yelling encouraging words. She was overtaken by what she saw. She wiped away tears, according to witnesses, as she acknowledged 2:412 minutes and 41 seconds for the audience. There was no sign of defeat in those tears. They carried the burden of millions of people. The unadulterated feeling of being so near something, the unshakable link between a young athlete and the nation that believes in her, is captured in 2:492 minutes and 49 seconds. And as Stadium 1's lights went out, one thing became 2:582 minutes and 58 seconds. The story of Alexandra Eala did not finish here. For many viewers worldwide, it appeared to be the start of something considerably larger at 3:053 minutes and 5 seconds. Even the eminent personnel appears to have been profoundly affected by tennis fire stories from inside the Indian Wells Open grounds. Stadium 1 was filled with intense emotion for 3:123 minutes and 12 seconds that evening. Fans typically start moving toward the exits as soon as the game is over. However, this time, something remarkable occurred at 3:223 minutes, 22 seconds. 3:243 minutes, 24 seconds. Thousands of fans remained seated. Rather, they continued to stand while cheering and singing Alexandra Eala's name. As the stadium, the lights gradually faded at 3:333 minutes, 33 seconds, and her name echoed through the desert. 3:373 minutes, 37 seconds wave after wave of gratitude from an audience that was obviously aware of what they had just seen. For numerous onlookers, it was a moment that the final score was exceeded by 3-4 53 minutes and 45 seconds. According to reports, a seasoned tennis analyst leaned over to a coworker and made a straightforward but impactful comment. "I have witnessed champions triumph 5:43 minutes, 54 seconds, and get less applause than Alexandra Eala, who just lost." The atmosphere was much quieter but no less strong within the stadium's restricted VIP tunnel. Witnesses claim that as the players started to leave the court at 4:64 minutes, 6 seconds, tennis legend Rafael Nadal was waiting close to the entrance. There was allegedly a mixture in his expression. 4:144 minutes, 14 seconds of silent sorrow and pride. When Eala eventually emerged, her face partially concealed by a towel, Nadal refrained from 4:214 minutes, 21 seconds without any technical guidance or discussion of the game. Rather, he just moved forward and extended his arms. The two hugged each other in 4:294 minutes. 29 seconds was a silent show of solidarity that expressed more than any speech could. Even if the scoreboard showed a loss, it was obvious that Eala had already won something much greater at that precise moment. 4:404 minutes, 40 seconds the entire tennis world's respect and affection. Her incredible run at Indian Wells was far from over. It had turned into millions of Filipino fans were proudly and emotionally watching this 4:474 minute, 47-second segment of a bigger national narrative. Eventually, the stadium started to empty around 4:554 minutes and 55 seconds. The desert night returned to stillness as the applause subsided and the chant muted. However, for many 5:025 minutes, 2 seconds, supporters, particularly the fervent Pinoy Army of Filipino fans, after the game, there was a profound emotional void for 5:065 minutes and 6 seconds. The silence in the complex's basement tunnels seemed much more oppressive than the boisterous crowd. 5:145 minutes, 14 seconds that had previously packed the arena. Alexandra Eala strolled down the stadium's lengthy concrete hallways, T5:205 minutes and 20 seconds. The moment's actuality started to sink in. The outside noise vanished behind the large soundproof doors that led to the private players section. 5:295 minutes and 29 seconds in total. The true narrative was developing away from the spotlight, but television cameras had already turned their attention to Linda Noskova's post-match interview. 5:395 minutes, 39 seconds. Witnesses inside the locker room area claim that as soon as Eala entered the players' private rooms, she let go of the surge of a motor was only getting doorway silently at 6:566 minutes and 56 seconds. When tennis great Rafael Nadal walked in, staff members naturally stopped talking and fell silent. 7:057 minutes, 5 seconds. Nadal had been instrumental in directing Eala's growth in the past few years. However, strategies or technical advice had little to do with what transpired afterward. 7:137 minutes, 13 seconds. Nadal just walked over and sat down on the floor next to her, without giving a speech or explaining the match. It was a straightforward gesture, but 7:217 minutes, 21 seconds, one that exuded the subdued dominance of a champion who was more familiar than most with the emotional warfare of tennis. As reported by those in attendance, 7:297 minutes, 29 seconds. Nadal sent a brief communication in Spanish that was only audible to her. "Only the score is visible to the world." He reportedly informed her that it was 7-3 67 minutes and 36 seconds, Alex. "However, I saw the heart. We didn't lose today. It was the start of something greater." Witnesses report that Eala slowly looked up at 7:447 minutes and 44 seconds, her eyes still crimson with weeping. Then Nadal extended his hand and gave her a tiny, worn tennis ball. Took 7:527 minutes and 52 seconds. They had used the identical ball earlier in the competition during one of their late-night training sessions. What a few insiders possessed 8:008 minutes, dubbed the Sun and Stars Midnight Practice in jest. It could have appeared normal to others, but to Eala, the time was 8:088 minutes and 8 seconds. It served as a reminder that there was never a single game or trophy at the end of this trip. It has to do with something bigger. Development, resiliency, 8:178 minutes, 17 seconds, and the arduous path to greatness. Even in loss, the future was being planned. In the interim, only another talk was taking place outside the changing room doors at 8:248 minutes and 24 seconds. According to reports, businesspeople and tournament officials were already debating the 8:3:28 minutes, 32 seconds. Eala's impact during the event was amazing. One thing had become indisputable in spite of her elimination. The ELA effect, the increase in 8:4:28 minutes, 42 seconds. The last point had not erased the worldwide interest, fervent fan support, and revitalized enthusiasm around women's tennis. If anything, it had at 8:5:08 minutes and 50 seconds, the strength only increased. Tennis broadcast statistics started to decline, according to rumors going around the Indian Wells Open grounds. Not too long after Alexandra Eala left the court, at 8:5:78 minutes and 57 seconds. Her spectacular run had become one of the tournament's main plot points for many viewers worldwide. After the conclusion of that tale, the atmosphere surrounding the incident appeared to change almost immediately at 9:0:99 minutes, 9 seconds. The atmosphere apparently became tense inside the executive quarters of the competition. Investors and 9:189 minutes, 18 seconds organizers, notably tournament owner Larry Ellison, who had been a major supporter of the event's international growth, were reportedly talking about the abrupt shift in momentum.